Welcome to the Daily AI News, brought to you by the Day After AI News channel.
Today is Monday, February 23, 2026.
Today is entirely about divergence. We're looking at this massive structural split in how computers are actually physically built, a huge divide in how we're going to treat illness, basically a civil war in the art world.
Right.
And then this terrifying economic theory that suggests human consumption might just become obsolete entirely.
Yeah, that last one, the ghost GDP concept, we are definitely saving that for the end because it is the kind of thing that will keep you up at night.
Oh, absolutely.
But we really need to start with the hardware today because the numbers coming out of the semiconductor industry right now are just completely ignoring gravity.
They are. And it really starts with a forecast that has basically everyone on Wall Street rewriting their spreadsheets this morning.
Right. So Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, she just dropped a number that kind of makes your eyes water. She's predicting the AI chip market alone could hit $1 trillion by 2030.
Which is a staggering number. I mean,
It's the GDP of the Netherlands, just in computer chips.
oh, right. But you have to look at why she's saying that. This isn't just about, gamers buying better graphics cards or people upgrading their laptops. AMD is identifying this fundamental transition from what we call the PC era to the intelligence factory era.
Intelligence factories, it sounds almost, I don't know, Victorian, like we're building steam engines for thought. But what does that actually look like in the physical world?
Well, it looks like data centers becoming the primary heavy industry of the modern world. But the nuance here, and I think this is what casual observers kind of miss, is where that $1 trillion is actually going. AMD's betting heavily on the shift from training to inference.
Okay, let's double click on that for a second because people hear those terms thrown around interchangeably. Training is basically the university education of the AI, right?
Exactly. Training is the brute force period. You take this massive cluster of GPUs, you feed it basically the entire internet, and you burn gigawatts of energy just to teach the model how to think.
Right.
It's incredibly expensive, but you really only do it once, or maybe periodically when you update the model.
And then inference is the actual day job.
Right. Inference is the application. It's what happens after graduation.
Yeah.
Every single time you ask a chatbot a question, or an autonomous agent writes a line of code, or a car decides to brake at a stop sign, that is inference.
Okay, that makes total sense. You spend 4 years in college, but you spend 40 years working. The training is a sunk cost, but the inference is where the recurring revenue is.
Precisely. And that massive continuous demand for inference is creating a huge engineering problem.
Right.
Because general-purpose GPUs, the big ones from NVIDIA and AMD, they're incredibly flexible. You can run any software on them, but that flexibility comes with a heavy tax.
An efficiency tax.
Yes. Which brings us to a startup out of Toronto called Telus, and they are arguably the most disruptive hardware story we've seen in years.
Yeah, they are basically looking at the current GPU architecture and saying, you're doing this all wrong, which takes some confidence to tell NVIDIA they're doing it wrong.
It does take confidence.
Yeah.
But they have the physics to back it up, honestly. They are attacking something called the memory wall.
The memory wall. What is that actually in hardware terms?
So in a standard GPU, like an H100, the computing core, the actual brain, is very fast.
Mm-hmm.
But the data, the weights of the AI model, those live in memory chips that are physically separated from that core.
Okay, so the data literally has travel across the board.
Constantly.
Mm.
Back and forth, billions of times a second. And that movement consumes something like 90% of the chip's energy.
Wow.
Think of it like a commute. Imagine if you had a Ferrari engine, but to get a single drop of gas, you had to drive across a bridge in stop-and-go traffic. You aren't limited by your engine at that point. You're limited by the bridge.
So you're spending 90% of your energy just commuting to the data. So how does Telus fix the bridge?
Well, they don't fix it. They just blow it up.
Right.
Their new chip, the HC1 or the hardcore one, it creates a direct physical representation of the AI model. They literally cast the neural network weights straight into the silicon itself.
Wait, so the software literally becomes the hardware?
Yes. The neural network isn't a program running on the chip anymore.
Yeah.
It is the chip. There's no memory wall because the data is hardwired right next to the compute gates.
That sounds incredible for speed, but, and this is the obvious question, doesn't that make the chip completely dumb? I mean, if Anthropic or Meta updates their software, if Llama 3 becomes Llama 4, doesn't that expensive chip just become a paperweight?
And that is the ultimate trade-off. You are trading all your flexibility for pure, raw power. And the power gains are just absurd. An NVIDIA H100 runs a Llama model at maybe 150 tokens per second. the Telus HC1, it clocks 17,000 tokens per second.
17,000 versus 150.
Yeah.
That's not even a generational leap. That's an entirely different species of computer.
It is, and it opens up what they call ubiquitous inference. If you can run a model that fast and that efficiently, you don't even need a cloud connection anymore. You could have a superintelligence running locally in your car or your fridge without draining the battery in 5 minutes.
But I'm still stuck on that update problem. AI moves so fast right now. If I buy a chip hardwired for a model from February, I mean, isn't it obsolete by June?
That was the big skepticism.
Hmm.
But Telus claims they've actually solved the manufacturing bottleneck. They've automated the entire foundry process so they can go from a software file to a finished physical chip in just weeks instead of years.
So it's almost like fast fashion, but for silicon. New season, new chip.
That's a really great way to put it. If you know exactly what model you need to run, say, a very specific self-driving algorithm, why would you pay the energy tax for a flexible chip? You'd just print the brain directly into the metal.
It's a fascinating pivot, moving from software-defined AI back to hardware-defined AI. But since we were talking about the brains, let's look at the actual minds running on them, because the model wars on the software side are getting very, very specific right now.
Oh yeah, we are seeing the market fracture into these hyper-specific niches. It's no longer just a question of who has the best overall chatbot.
Right. I've been seeing this debate all over the developer forums lately. It's the coding showdown between Claude and Grok. And it really feels like people are picking teams based on their own personality types.
They essentially are. You have Claude from Anthropic, which has really cemented itself as the architect. It scores incredibly high on benchmarks like SWE Bench. I think it was around 80.9% recently.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And developers love it because it's rigorous. It writes very clean code. It's great at debugging. It's basically the assistant you want when you are building a complex banking system and you absolutely cannot afford a bug.
And then on the other side, you have Grok.
Right. Grok from xAI is the hacker. It's built for raw speed and real-time data ingestion. It's less about architectural purity and way more about getting a back-end logic script running right now. It has that classic move fast and break things DNA.
It's funny how these AI models seem to basically inherit the personality of their parent companies. You know, the safety-obsessed Anthropic produces the careful architect, and the Elon Musk-led xAI produces the speed demon.
It really is noticeable. But, Musk actually made a comment recently that kind of renders this whole debate moot, at least in his eyes.
Because he thinks the agents will just take over.
Exactly. He predicts we are moving past coding assistance entirely toward autonomous coding swarms. You won't ask Grok to help you write a function. You'll just tell a manager agent, hey, build me this app, and it will spin up 10 sub-agents to do it. The human just moves from being a writer to an editor, or just an observer.
Which is great for productivity, obviously, but maybe a little existential for junior developers who are trying to learn the craft. I mean, if the agents do all the swarm work, how do you ever learn enough to actually become the editor?
That is the crisis of confidence we're facing across the board. But if there's one place where we absolutely still need the architect approach, that careful, rigorous precision, it's healthcare.
Absolutely. And that transitions us perfectly to this new study out of Shanghai. It really highlights why good enough is definitely not good enough in medicine. They compared two major models, DeepSeek R1 and Dubao 1.5 Pro, on how they handle ovarian cancer.
Right. And ovarian cancer is notoriously complex. It requires surgery, chemotherapy, genetic screening. And the results of this study illustrate what researchers are calling the jagged frontier of AI capabilities.
The jagged frontier, I really like that term. It implies the progress isn't just a smooth upward curve.
Exactly. So DeepSeek R1 was an absolute powerhouse in clinical decision-making. It scored 98 out of 100 excellent ratings from human oncologists regarding treatment protocols.
Wow.
It knew the exact chemo dosages, the adverse effects to watch for, the surgical timelines.
98 out of 100. That is arguably better than a tired human resident at the end of a 24-hour shift.
It is. Dr. Jitendra Singh actually made this point recently that AI is going to remove the subjectivity and the fatigue from pathology and diagnostics. He tied it into India's massive push for genome sequencing right now, aiming for 1 million citizens so they have the data to feed these precise models.
But here is the catch from that Shanghai study, right? Dubao 1.5 Pro, which got absolutely crushed in the treatment category. I think it scored a 41 miss N. It actually outperformed DeepSeek in prevention and risk factor analysis.
Yes, and that is so bizarre to think about.
One model is a world-class surgeon, and the other is a world-class genetic counselor.
Exactly. And this is incredibly dangerous if hospital administrators treat AI as just a monolith. If a hospital just says, oh, we use AI now, that's not enough. You have to validate specific models for highly specific domains. You might need a DeepSeek agent for the operating room and a Dubao agent for the patient intake clinic.
It definitely complicates things, but it also makes the whole ecosystem much more robust. Speaking of robust ecosystems, let's pivot to the creative side. Because while doctors are figuring out which bot prescribes the best chemo, artists are fighting a literal civil war right now over whether AI can create art at all.
The tension there is at an all-time high. And we have Google Gemini dropping new tools that are just adding fuel to the fire.
Right. Google Gemini can now generate music. They're using this model called Lyria 3. And it's not just text prompts anymore. Users, who have to be over 18, by the way, they can prompt it using video or images to get a 30-second track.
And it even generates the cover art using another model called Nano Banana, which is a great name.
It is. And to their credit, Google is putting SynthID watermarks on all the tracks to prevent deepfakes. But the bigger philosophical battle is happening in the fine art world. The lightning rod for this whole debate right now is Refik Anadol.
Yes, he's the pioneer of AI art who does those massive, swirling digital installations like the one that took over the Sphere in Vegas and his exhibits in MoMA.
Right. He calls his work machine hallucinations. He basically feeds millions of images like raw NASA data or nature reserves into these massive algorithms and lets them, quote, dream. He calls data his pigment.
It definitely creates a spectacle. It's mesmerizing to stand in front of. But the traditional art critics, they are not buying the hype.
Not buying it is putting it politely. Jerry Saltz, the Pulitzer-winning critic, absolutely eviscerated Anadol's work this week. He called it a $500,000 screensaver.
And a giant lava lamp.
A giant lava lamp. Ouch. That is so dismissive.
It is brutal. But Saltz's critique actually goes way deeper than just the aesthetics. He argues that AI art completely lacks carnality.
Carnality.
Yeah. He says that true art is born from the awareness of death, of sex, of heartbreak, of the fact that we have limited time on Earth. And AI has none of that. It's just an average of averages. It can create a beautiful image of a flower, but it doesn't fundamentally understand that flowers die.
That is a profound distinction. Can you actually mimic the human condition without ever having been human? It feels like we're asking a server farm to have a soul.
Right. Now, Anadol would argue that the humanity is in his curation, the choices he makes about which specific data sets to use. But then you have the other flank of this war artist like Molly Crabapple.
And her issue isn't philosophical at all. It's pure economics and ethics. She calls these generators corporate plagiarism bots.
Exactly. Because even if Anadol uses ethically sourced NASA data, the tools that most regular people use, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, they were built by scraping the portfolios of millions of living artists without any consent or compensation.
So when you look at an AI image, you have to ask, are you seeing a new creation or are you just seeing a highly sophisticated collage of theft?
It's a question we really haven't answered as a society yet. And honestly, while we debate the theft of artistic style, there are scammers out there right now stealing something much more intimate, our actual identities.
Yeah, this brings us to the warnings segment of the deep dive. This is the dark side of that high-fidelity future we were just talking about. We have a report from the Hyderabad police about a new biometric scam that is just, it's insidious because it weaponizes your own empathy against you.
It really does. This is the Good Samaritan scam.
Walk us through how this works because everyone needs to hear this.
So picture this. You're walking through a mall or a train station. A frantic person, often an elderly gentleman, approaches you. He says his phone isn't working, his screen is glitching, and he desperately needs to check his pension status or call his daughter, and he asks you to help him look at it.
And your instinct as a decent human being is to say, sure, let me take a look. You take the phone and hold it up to read the screen.
And the exact moment you hold that phone up to your face, you are done. The phone is already active on a high-resolution video call, or it's screen recording your face. They aren't trying to make a call at all. They're capturing your face, your iris, the micro movements of your eyes.
And they use that to spoof biometric security on your own accounts.
Exactly. Deepfake technology combined with that high-quality close-up capture can now bypass liveness checks on most banking apps. They take your face, they generate a voice clone from you saying, sure, let me help, and they drain your accounts.
That is terrifying, because the advice here basically boils down to don't help strangers, which is so corrosive to society. It just makes us all paranoid.
It totally breaks the social contract. But the security advice right now is extremely clear. Never physically handle a stranger's device. If they need help, tell them to put it on a table. Or go find a security guard for them. Do not put your face in the frame of their camera.
It's tragic we have to live like that. And it's not just strangers in the mall we have to worry about. It's the apps we are voluntarily downloading to our own phones. There was a report from NPower user this week about AI apps on Android that is pretty damning.
It is. It shows that people see the label AI and they immediately lower their guard. They download these random AI chatbots or photo enhancers from the App Store, and they just pour their lives into them.
Right. They upload sensitive work documents, or they confess deeply personal secrets to a chatbot because it feels like a private diary.
And where does that data go? In millions of cases, NPower user found it's being sent totally unencrypted to public servers. It's not even that they're being hacked by sophisticated cybercriminals. The apps are just openly broadcasting your secrets.
The lesson there is that AI is just a marketing term. It is not a security clearance. Just because an app claims to be an intelligent friend doesn't mean it's private.
Exactly. So we have privacy leaks on our phones, identity theft in the malls, the potential end of human art.
Right. But let's zoom out to the biggest risk of all, the one that threatens the entire macroeconomic engine. You mentioned ghost GDP at the start of the deep dive.
Yes. This is a concept coming out of a recent thought experiment by Citrini Research. They were looking at what they call the 2028 global intelligence crisis. And it completely challenges the fundamental way we measure economic health.
Okay, break this down for us. Ghost GDP. It sounds spooky, but what does it actually mean?
Well, it is spooky. So traditionally, GDP, gross domestic product, measures the total value of goods and services produced by a country. Now imagine a massive Fortune 500 company replaces its entire white-collar workforce. The coders, the accountants, the middle managers, all replaced by AI agents.
Okay, so productivity goes through the roof because the agents work 24/7, they don't take lunch breaks, and they cost pennies on the dollar compared to human salaries.
Exactly. The company's spreadsheets look amazing, profits skyrocket, and technically, the country's GDP goes up because the output is higher and more efficient.
But the wages paid to humans go to zero.
Correct. And here's the trap. Machines do not consume.
Ah, I see exactly where this is going. An AI agent doesn't buy a house in the suburbs.
Right. He doesn't go to Disney World. He doesn't buy the new iPhone or pay for a Netflix subscription or buy a coffee on the way to the office.
Because it doesn't have an office. This is human intelligence displacement.
Yeah.
You have essentially hollowed out the consumer base. You've created an economy with massive, infinite supply and absolutely zero demand.
Precisely.
But wait, if no one has any money to buy the stuff the AI is producing, the company goes bust anyway.
Yeah.
Doesn't the system just naturally correct itself?
Eventually, yes. But that correction is a massive deflationary spiral. Before it corrects, you could have a prolonged period of this ghost economy, where you have highly efficient, automated factories churning out digital and physical products for nobody.
The stock market might rally on the efficiency gains while Main Street completely collapses because the velocity of money just stops.
Exactly. The numbers on the screen say we're rich, but the people on the street are completely broke. And we are actually seeing a precursor to this exact value shift in the military right now.
How so? In what way?
Look at Shield AI's VB-8 drone. It's a vertical takeoff drone being used in conflict zones like Ukraine right now. The huge shift there is moving from kinetic value to intelligence value. Meaning they aren't asking for bigger missiles or more firepower. They are asking for better sensors and AI to simply find the targets. The physical object, the ammunition, is becoming cheap and disposable. The intelligence is becoming the premium asset.
Oh, wow.
Ghost GDP is that exact same logic applied to the global civilian economy. If the value of human labor drops to zero because AI can do it cheaper, and the cost of physical goods drops to near zero because production is fully automated, our current capitalist model just breaks down.
We've built the perfect engine, but we completely forgot to put a driver in the seat.
Or rather, we forgot that the driver is also the only customer paying for the gas. We desperately need to figure out how to distribute the wealth generated by these new intelligence factories if the humans aren't the ones working in them anymore. Otherwise, the economy just becomes this closed loop of machines building things for other machines.
Well, on that incredibly uplifting note, I feel like I need to check my bank account, hug my kids, and maybe go touch some grass.
It's a Monday in 2026. Reality comes at you fast.
It certainly does. So just to recap the stack today, we have AMD and Telus physically hardwiring the brains of the future, betting $1 trillion that inference is the new oil. We have the software wars splitting into careful architects like Claude and speed demons like Grok.
And we have the cultural battleground, where artists and doctors are trying to figure out exactly where the human ends and the machine begins, all while we dodge biometric vampires in the shopping mall.
It is a lot to process, but that is exactly why we do this.
And here's a final thought for you to carry into the rest of your day. We talked about ghost GDP and the terrifying idea of machines replacing consumers. But flip that coin for a second. If AI eventually drives the cost of creating literally everything, code, art, medical diagnosis, physical goods, down to near zero, does money itself start to lose its meaning? If we reach a point of infinite efficiency, are we all broke, or are we finally completely free?
I think I need to sit in a dark room and think about that one for a while. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. See you tomorrow.
Before you go, please subscribe to the podcast Prime. And if you enjoyed today's episode, hit like to support us. Thanks for listening and see you next time.